U.S. Senator John McCain. Senator, always great to have you on the couch.
Thank you.
So happy to see you.
Thank you.
What's your reaction to Secretary of State Kerry's comments now?
Oh, it's just nonsense. You know, I used to get really upset. Did you notice on Sunday he said, well, Netanyahu, Bibi supported the war in Iraq. Well, what about that? He supported the war in Iraq. I mean, it's and the fact that every country in the region is going to go nuclear if we sign this deal that apparently that he is desperate to get done
with Iran.
Yeah, with Iran. But listen, I have heard from Middle Eastern leaders direct that they will go nuclear, and you will see a nuclearization of the entire region. And why not? And by the way, the Saudis have got a lot of money. It wouldn't take much to purchase a couple of them from Pakistan. Henry Kissinger, not a renowned demagogue, testified before our Armed Services Committee. He said the original intent of these was to get an agreement that Iran would never get a nuclear weapon. Now the agreement seems to be that it's, quote, delaying them
for 10 years
or a year breakout, or they still haven't complied with the IAEA. We could spend all morning talking about how ridiculous this whole exercise is.
Look at the deal. The deal has split Democrats and Republicans, the U.S. and Israel. It has split the Sunni allied nations and America. This is all because of a deal that our chief enemy and ourselves are leading.
The foreign minister of one of the Middle Eastern countries told me and some other senators in Munich, he said, we're beginning to believe it's far better to be an enemy of the United States than a friend. And that's what it's becoming.
How controversial should Benjamin Netanyahu's speeches be today and particularly tomorrow?
If leaders of Congress want someone to speak to Congress, it seems to me that why should someone be so offended? That's not what this is all about. This is because Bibi will make a compelling argument against the outlines of this agreement, and that's why they're acting in such a hysterical fashion. I mean, the President's National Security Advisor saying this is rupturing the fabric of our relationship or something like that. This is really the worst situation by far that any of us have seen as far as U.S.-Israel relations. The only democratically elected, free and democratic nation in the entire Middle East. And it's very serious, and it's very unfortunate.
What's the basis of this disconnect? Why, in your view, is Senator Kerry and this Obama administration so disconnected? And what's the motivation in terms of, they talk about existential threats all the time. Isn't this an existential threat to Israel and to the region based upon what you're talking about, that everybody ramps up with nuclear weapons if the deal that goes through goes through?
They have a delusion, my friend, and this is, it took me a long time to really believe it, but it is true. They have this delusion as they make this nuclear deal with Iran. There's a brand new relationship with Iran. Iran and we are partners for peace throughout the Middle East. I mean, it is crazy. The Iranians are on the move, whether it be Lebanon, whether it be Syria, whether Yemen, a success story. They're all moving throughout the Middle East. In Iraq, it's the Shia militias that are doing the fighting.
So we shouldn't be
We're becoming the Iranian Air Force.
So we should not be celebrating this invasion into Tikrit. Yeah, ISIS is worse, but how much better is an Iranian-led Shia militia if they take back Saddam Hussein's hometown?
Right, and these are the same people we were fighting against in the surge when we were fighting against al-Qaeda and the Shia militias.
But yet Secretary of State Kerry says we are taking back Tikrit.
As I say, I've gotten to the point where I think all of us are a little bit numb. Speaking of Boris, speaking of Vladimir Putin, the president, tell Vladimir that when I'm reelected that I'll be more flexible. Remember that? The reset button. And now they're killing off one of the great, really, leaders for democracy in Russia, and I'm very, very sad.
You know, you want to talk about numb and callous. Well, Saturday Night Live had a parody. You and I in the break were talking about the Super Bowl. One of the most moving Super Bowl commercials, not just by my account, by many, was the one where the father and daughter move through life, and then the daughter ends up signing up and enlisting in the United States military. And we see that was an emotional commercial. SNL decided to parody this as a daughter decides to go off to join ISIS. We're going to watch, and then I'd love your reaction, Senator.
You be careful, okay?
Dad, it's just ISIS.
think that's funny. I'm a big fan of SNL, obviously, but that's just not, frankly, it's offensive, particularly since we have these 3 young British women right now that they've been able to get them into Syria. By the way, that shows that they've got a pretty good network of getting people out of Europe and into Syria.
Yeah.
Or Iraq.
And that's something real. These 3 Brits decide, okay, or teenagers, ISIS looks attractive to me. We're going to go head there. So that's what Bailey, they were building the whole thing about.
Not entertaining.
But do you think that's an indicator that perhaps maybe because of this administration's inability to name it specifically and not take a tough stance on ISIS and terror, as many have said, that now we have the world of comedy sort of taking it lightly too?
Maybe, but the fact is, I can't directly connect the two, but the failure to identify them for what they are is more than just the naming. It is an indication of the refusal of this president and his team that this is radical Islam. These are radical Islam terrorists, and they perverted the Islamic religion, but that's what they are. And the failure to identify them, of course, is just an indicator of the dream world in which they exist.
Senator, what an honor and pleasure to have you here in the studio here today on Fox and Friends.
Great to be with you.
So happy to have you.
My
Sure,
pleasure.
Senator. Thank
Chairman
you.
of the Senate Armed Services Committee.
That's
There
right.
you go.
Finally got it.